Hello, checking 1, 2, 3, under the tree, in the shade, just like me in the dugout. I don't know what I'm saying. This is why I don't rap. What's up? My name is Tom Jones. I'm a multi-instrumentalist music producer and DJ turntablist. I'm originally from Earth and currently residing in Maui, Hawaii. And this is my vibe. Is that it?
Perfect, bro.
Okay. So the way I got into music is actually pretty interesting. I originally wanted to be a pilot because my dad's a pilot, a helicopter pilot. And I wanted to fly jets, but I don't have the vision to fly jets. I figured that out at a young age. I was in like, I don't know, 5th grade, elementary school. And I was like, well, I'm not gonna fly jets. What else am I interested in? Because like every other kid, I was obsessed, right? So I went to this school and like every Wednesday they had this this band play. It was like a praise and worship band. And I would watch the drummer and I would just be obsessed. Like every Wednesday, I'm just like watching this guy play. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And so I started like tapping along. My dad played drums as well, so he showed me a few things. And I would practice on a mouse pad with some chopsticks. And then luckily one day my dad got me some drumsticks. And that's kind of how it started. I was just really into drums. I loved the sound and just listening to music. I would always just gravitate towards drums. We'd hear like drum solos from the music my dad would listen to, like the Allman Brothers, Iron Butterfly, just kind of drum solo stuff there. Cherry Poppin' Daddies has a really cool drum intro on one of their songs. You know, just stuff like that. And I wasn't like particularly interested in a certain type of music. Actually, I kind of take that back. I did like Van Halen, which was really random, but and I wanted to play synthesizer at an early age. But anyways, so drums is kind of like where it started. Like every other kid, I had some piano lessons and I didn't like it. I really just wanted to play synthesizer. But that kind of like helped set a foundation for things. And yeah, later on, I went to school band and I signed up for band and I was like, I want to play drums. And they give you this like test and they test you on all these different instruments. And they're like, well, we really need trombone players. Are you sure you don't want to play trombone? And I'm over here like acing this test, like mimicking everything this person is throwing at me like perfectly. And they're like, well, you know, I don't know, maybe you should play trombone. It's like, no, I want to play drums. So that's where it started. Started in grade school, playing drums in school band, and that's all I did. You know, there's nothing to do. That was back in Alabama. There's nothing to do. Occasionally visit friends, you know, but we were all in band anyways, so pretty much we just practice all the time. Or I would practice on my own. And I would do that like 4 hours a day, just playing drums, just whatever I could consume. Any kind of music, any of the stuff from school. Kids are lucky now, they have YouTube and like all these have unlimited resources. And yeah, if that was around when I was younger, I'd be like a professional something. I was drum section leader for a really long time. Really loved marching band and drumline. I love drumline. I didn't care about marching band. I love drumline. And really just playing cadences, that was the most fun. Everything else was just kind of like the things that we had to do. But like a good drum cadence is really fun. And I still like that stuff now. And then at some point, someone showed me, one of my band friends was like, hey, my brother makes beats. I was like, what is that? What do you mean he makes beats? And he said, come check this out. And he pulled up Fruity Loops, like 1.2 or something like that. I think I started on 2.5. So it was a really early pirated copy of Fruity Loops, which he gave me on a burn CD. But he showed me this program. He's like, look, you can just like click around all these random places and you hit play and it sounds good. It sounded terrible. I was like, wow, this is really cool. So I would take the drum cadences that we were playing, like, so I got to write the new one for the next year. I wanted to know what it sounded like, so I would input that into Fruity Loops. And then I was able to give those to my fellow drummers, and so that's kind of where it started. It was interesting because, you know, in band it's all about Western music notation, but Fruity Loops is a step sequencer. So like really early on, I was connecting those dots. Moving forward, I went to college for music. I didn't want to be a band director at the time, and they had this new program. It was music industry. I was like, well, this is kind of like Fruity Loops, you know? And so we started on GarageBand. I had Sony Acid Pro, which I knew nothing about, barely used it. So I ended up going to Logic, and then after college and everything, eventually moved over to Ableton. And I've been on Ableton since. Hardware came about at a later time. Somebody on Craigslist in my area had it was an MC303 Roland groove box, but the person was a smoker, so everything was dirty, it stunk, and some of the buttons didn't work. So that's when I got into repairing gear. So I would take that thing apart, clean everything. I eventually had like a really nice shiny piece, and it worked because I fixed it. And then that turned into, well, what about this synthesizer from the 80s? So I got my synthesizer finally, but it needed a bunch of repairs. And so I learned how to solder, just replacing components, and there was still a lot of cleaning. Like cleaning, when I get old gear like that, cleaning is like the first thing that happens. So here we are now. We got a home studio. It's funny because in college they get you to write these like, where do you see yourself in 10-year plans? And my 10-year thing was, I want to have a recording studio or just a music production studio and be making music. That was in 2006 or 7. And so it's a little longer than 10 years, but here we are now in this amazing place, and I have a home studio, and it's pretty decent, you know, and I get to make music for fun. I don't know, I mean, I like talking about the band thing because people, I don't know, they just look at band as like this, like it ends with band, right? Mm-hmm. But really, that's kind of like the reason I make music, like produce music, is because of band, you know? So it can start with band and eventually end up as something completely different. Yeah. Are you still filming?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, it's like, everybody has this idea that if you want to do something, it has to be exactly like the way that you plan it and want it to be. But really, like, you just need to get in there and do something. Like you're on the path already, you know? Mm-hmm. And so everything's interconnected. Yeah, so like just playing different instruments, because like they're all related together. Like puppy. I wasn't always able to be a drummer, so like I was a bass player, I was a guitarist, I was the singer. No, it was a punk band, so like, you know, I didn't have to sing that great. If you do something really well, people will say, oh, you're so talented. You know, but really, you should be saying, wow, you're so skilled. Because talent is just like this knack to acquire skill. You know, it's like an accelerant to skill. But having a good sounding voice is just a gift, right? So if you have that gift, I'm jealous. One of my friends, Wade, who's, you know, a lifelong friend, and I've never watched an anime like to completion. He's like, yo, watch this anime, it's so cool. And so he came over and we actually watched Samurai Champloo like all the way through. We stayed up all night. He's like, you're gonna love it, man. It's like break dancing and like all the beats are really cool, the music's cool. And I was like, wow, this is really neat. You know, and I've always liked beats, just from a drummer's perspective, you know, it's like, why is this beat so funky? Why does it sound so cool, you know? So then it became this like, well, I can do music production. Maybe I want to try and make some of these beats. And that was Nujabes, right? Everybody starts with Nujabes. I was actually trying to do too much. I was trying to play all the instruments and and all the keyboards and the sounds like by myself, when really I could have just swiped a loop, a sample from somewhere off of vinyl. That would have been like the best way to do it. But so I started diving into this like beat making thing, and it's like start looking into the history, and it's like, well, okay, well, why did they use this break? And then you go and find that break, and then you try it, and then you chop it, and you're like, wow, it sounds really good, and I didn't have to do anything. You know, I didn't have to work so hard. Like, it's so much work to take like a sound and massage it, like a sample from a sample pack or something, but not like something lifted off of a record, like that's already mastered and sounds great. Sampling was interesting because there and again, I thought they did so much work, chopping stuff up and like really moving things around and pitching stuff. Like I heard, you know, they would pitch stuff. And so I was pitching all kinds of stuff and like taking these tiny samples and trying to just do all this work. Eventually I came across this playlist of hip hop samples for vinyl samples for hip hop. And immediately I listened to the first track and I was like, oh, that could make a beat right there. Within the first 4 bars, like you just hear it, and it's like, okay. And then it was the same thing for the next one. I said, okay, I get it now, right? Try not to work so hard. And really you just have to dig. You have to listen to a lot of music. So that was kind of the journey with hip hop. As I'm telling you all these things, like this was largely just a singular journey. This is an individual venture, right? I didn't have any friends that were really into it. So it was just me. And you know, you get lonely, and honestly, like you start getting weird when it's just you all the time. And when you meet somebody, you're like, oh, hey, you know, like, oh, you know, you're so excited, and they're just like, oh, man, you're kind of weird. And so, like, I just remember that feeling. I'm like, I need to be around other people who are into the same thing, and we need to have like an outlet. You know, it's great if you make music, but it has to go full circle. Like, you can't just make music and then just let it live on your hard drive or your floppy disk or whatever it is. Like, it has to be shared. And people make music for all kinds of reasons, and like you can do it just for other people, you can do it just for yourself, but I think it has to go out. If a tree falls in the forest and nobody's there, it doesn't make any sound, you know, it's kind of like that. Like, are you just a tree in a forest where nobody hears your music? You know, I think everybody has something to share, whether it's like a masterpiece or not. You know, people are on all kinds of different levels, and what sounds beautiful to somebody might sound terrible to somebody else. But it all matters, like in the collective, you know, if you're from Earth, it matters to Earth. I don't know. I would say for anybody or everybody doing music in some capacity to dive deep in whatever it is. I think it's important for people to dive in and find out the history. Just keep doing it. You know, I've just gotten to the point now, like it's taken a really long time, I don't know, 20 years, 15, 20 years, to where like now I no longer care what other people think when I make music. I care after, you know, like I want people to hear it, and when they say it's great, you know, that makes me happy. But to get to that point to where like you don't care when you're creating, and you're creating for the sake of creating. Like, that's a special place. That's a magical place where cool things happen. You know, going to the record store and finding some old Hawaiian disco record and then listening to the entire record and eventually stumbling on this crazy intro that doesn't sound anything like the rest of the record, and then throwing like some old break over it and chopping that up, and then it just sounds awesome. Like, that's the core. That's fun. That's what I like. Which did happen, by the way. I think Andy Warhol said something like that. He said it's important to survive and make art. It was a quote, something like that. But the idea is that like you don't have to have this amazing studio, and a lot of times out of desperation comes great creation. When it's not fun anymore, that's when I'm just gonna hang it up, go read books on the beach or something. It's gonna be a while. It's gonna be a while. I don't know what my vibe is. Yeah, my vibe. What is my vibe? I think my vibe is to to recognize the significance of the beginner and also the expert, and to realize that they're all important and we're all on this like same path, this journey, and it's all just important. So my vibe is to be accepting and also to cultivate, to help when it's needed, yeah, and to be as chill as possible.